It's Thursday, October 19th, 2017. It's time for WorthPoint Chats with Harry Rinker. I'm Greg Watkins from WorthPoint.com, and it's time for our weekly conversation with our expert in all things antiques and collectibles, Harry Rinker. Harry, how you doing tonight?
Well, I'm doing great. I'm back home in Kentwood. As you know, we postponed yesterday's chat because I was in Washington, D.C., attending a meeting of the Citizen Stamp Advisory Committee. Normally, we would do the Wednesday night chat from the old hotel room in the Capitol Hill Hotel, and it was a tragedy we did not. I didn't have a room. I had a suite.
Oh, that would have looked nice behind you.
Yes, that would have. I could have, taken you on a tour of what it's like to be a consultant to the government. But then again, people might be concerned about how their tax dollars are being spent. But anyway, it was a beautiful. It was a beautiful time to be in Washington. And what happened last night was that we normally get together in the evening for dinner, and we had a member who comes in from Alexandria, Virginia, and she doesn't stay normally, and she asked if we would go over to Alexandria one time. Break my heart, Have you ever been over to Alexandria, Virginia?
I have not, no.
Oh, it's a great historic town. Once part of the District of Columbia. And then
it broke away.
Well, it broke away, and there was a little discussion in about 1860, 61 there. And it's now one of the big suburbs of Washington, D.C. But it's got all this wonderful federal architecture in it. And the so-called Old Town, which is where we were, is just nothing short of spectacular. It's on the Potomac River and so forth. Interesting meeting, by the way, of CSAC this time. I can't talk about what we talk about at the meetings, but tomorrow I'm going over to Detroit. We are issuing a joint hockey stamp. The Canadian Post is going to issue the same stamp we are. So, 100 years of professional hockey in Canada. Actually, it turns out that there were so many rights issues with all of it that it's really two hockey players, one older, one from an older era, one from a younger era. Getting ready to play professional hockey is the way it kind of looks like. But it's great to do this, and it's going to be at the new Little Caesars Arena, the new Red Wings Arena in Detroit. And so that's in my backyard in this case being a 2.5-hour drive to get there. But I am going to go over for the first day of issue ceremony, which is great fun. Those things are great fun, and I'm looking forward to it. We don't take personal credit for stamps, and I'm not taking personal credit for this one since it was the Canadian government that instituted. But I love the sports stamps we do, and so we had great fun with that. I'm looking forward to Gordie Howe's son will be there tomorrow, which will be very nice. A number of hockey Hall of Famers from the Detroit area and Canada area will be down. So who knows what autographs I will scarf up.
There you go.
Well, you just have to buy a cashier's envelope with a stamp on it, and there's a big autograph line, and you get so much time, and if the line weakens, you can run back through again with another one and run through back again. And I'm taking Linda along, so I know I'll get two.
You get two, right? Excellent.
I won't get one, but I'll get two. So it's kind of fun on that. So that's part is fun. Not this week, but next week we'll be doing the show from here, and we could talk probably more about this. But I don't know if I told you months ago I bought an old music box. Linda wanted a music box.
Right, and you were having it refurbished.
And I'm having it refurbished, and I pick it up on the 26th. And we won't discuss how much the music box cost or how much the restoration cost me.
But if I remember right, you were a little bit surprised at what you agreed to.
Yes. You phrased it correctly. I was surprised by what I agreed to, and then I remembered how much I love my wife, which goes to show that may not be the best way to buy antiques and collectibles. Because
by buying what your wife loves?
Well, no, I like to buy my wife antiques and collectibles, but this one I had to do a little juggling with the finances, and whenever I have to juggle money, the hardest thing for anything to believe in, someday I'm going to write a column about things you should never believe when a collector tells you something. We can talk about that for a minute. Like, oh, I don't have enough money to buy that. That's just bull feathers. Every collector can find money. I mean, I used to tell people, you say, go out there. I say, talk to them, see if you can pay it over time. Go take a bank loan. I remember one time I went into the bank in Macungie, Pennsylvania, and I said to the guy at the bank who I knew quite well, I want you to loan me $5,000 unsecured. And he said, what? And I said, now, come on, I've always paid my bills and I have a great record at the bank, and I know you have discretion up to a certain amount of money. It doesn't work that way today. Back then it did. And I said, I want you to just give me $5,000 on my own recognizance, and I promise I'll pay it back over 2 or 3 years or sooner. He says, Harry, what are you buying? I said, I'm not going to tell you. So he says, all right. He said, okay, I mean, you have a good track record. You mess it up once. He said, you're dead in the water. I said, no, I'll deal with this. So he loans me $5,000. Finally, after about 6 months, his curiosity got the better of him again. He says, okay, now, Harry, tell me what you bought. And I said, I bought an Erie Canal American Historical Staffordshire chamber pot. And he said, you're kidding. I said, no, that's what I bought. He said, it cost you $5,000. Well, I said, actually, it cost me $4,500, but I used the $500 for something else. And I've been paying it back. He says, oh, no, I got to come and see this. So he drove up to this was in Veracruz when I went to school in Veracruz, drove up to school in Veracruz, and he saw a $4,500 chamber, right? Now, he said, why'd you buy this? Well, you always are suspicious about stories about how many of something is known. There's only 2 known, right? Only 10 known. And the answer is nobody knows how many that are known, because nobody knows what's up in attics. Every time you think you know everything, there's something that comes out of it. Well, anyway, the long and the short of it was there were 4 known chamber pots, but there was only 1 known lid for the chamber pots. And 10 years earlier, I had bought the lid without the pot. So I was able to put the lid together with the pot and create the only known
complete
chamber pot. Now you have to understand, this is exactly what it is. You want to call it a thunder jug, mug, or whatever you want to call it, but it was meant to be used. It was not decorative, but it had these dark blue transfers of the Erie Canal scenes, including one right there you could aim at. Boom, right in the pot. Next thing you know, I get a call from him. And he said, I went to a bank meeting and I told the bank people about this, and the president of the bank wants to come and see this thing.
Now you can start charging admission and pay for it.
Well, I should have said, well, how about no interest for 3 months? But he came up and the words out of his mouth was, that's an expensive pot to piss in. And I said, you're right, sir, it is. And I said, I've never really used it. I'm a big fan of using antiques and collectibles. But in this case, I didn't use it.
Probably.
And I still have it. And I am hoping, unlike some of the other historical Staffordshire that I bought, that's another fun story about this thing. Things you should never believe when people tell you is, buy it now. It's a great investment. By the time you're ready to retire, it'll be worth 3 times what you paid for it. Now,
everybody's like, that's not true.
A lot in the 70s and 80s. Let me tell you, my friend, and particularly with American Historical View Staffordshire. Well, if I got out of the collection what I have in it, I probably would do okay. Although, it's like everything else. All I need is 2 people that want that chamber pot really bad.
Right.
And it could make up for all the other bad pieces that don't bring a lot of money. But, I'm wrestling. I'm wrestling with a big issue right now. I turned 76. I not since last we talked, but recently. And I don't know what it is. I am beginning to feel concerned about not getting rid of my stuff be a burden for the kids, or my wife. Okay?
Right.
Now, that does not mean I'm going to sell it. It may mean that I'm going to spend the rest of my life cataloging it. Sell it, they could just call up an auctioneer and here's all lotted out and ready to go. But the truth of the matter is that I'm really starting to do something I never thought I'd do, and that's think about selling the stuff. Now, originally, before I sold the puzzle collection, I had it in my will that there was to be a plastic box built, and all the pieces of all my puzzles were to be dumped in the box. And then anybody who was willing to take the time to sort through all the pieces, match them out to the puzzles, and put them together could have it. The other thing was back when, and this is one of the other things fortunate too. The older you get, the more likely it is some of your rivals are going to die. And some of my biggest Blue Staffordshire rivals have passed away. And I originally had it in my will that there would be a crane over my grave. And as my coffin would be lowered to the ground, the crane would open and my dark blue would drop from the sky, and anything they could catch, they could have, and all the rest would be destroyed. Now, well, the interest, taking this a step further, which I'm not sure you want to, but I will anyway, is that
it's your show, so let's go ahead. Take it wherever you want.
And just in case they want to cut these segments apart, we want to give them a number of different aspects they can talk about. But one of the things is, who is remembered in the trade? Did you ever think about that? Who does the trade remember? Who, when they die, has a legacy that transcends the death by 10 years? Okay?
Well, being a cynic, I would say that the person who made the big mistake.
Well, that might be right. That might be right. But, if I said to you, Alice Winchester, that doesn't mean anything to you, right?
No.
Right? No, that's right. If I said Wallace Nutting, you might know who that is. You wouldn't know what books he wrote, but you would know at least maybe the name, and you might associate it with Prince. But the point is that when I first took over Warman's in the early 1980s, I hired a PR person. And I said to the PR person, look, there are a number of things I want to do, but I'd like to establish a reputation in the trade. Now, clearly, you would think that she would say, now you should be a nice guy. Work hard, turn out quality product, and you will develop a reputation. That's not the advice she gave me. Ready for this?
Yeah.
Her advice was, only characters are remembered. And I said, I can do character.
You've done it well.
Yes. I mean, well, first of all, you have to have a personality to be a character to some extent already. But
right.
But what I did, where I've gone in the trade, and the funny thing now, not anymore, but when I was only in the trade for about 10 or 15 years, people thought I'd been in the trade for 30 or 40 years. Now that I'm 76, people think I've been in the trade for 30 and 40 years, and I have been in the trade 30 or 40 years. But a lot of what I do will survive because I was a character.
Yes, you are a character. And I don't
tend to stop being a character either.
I say that one again.
And I said I don't tend to stop being a character.
Yeah, no. You'll be a character.
And one of my characteristics is I tell it like I see it, and I don't care who I offend, which has led to problems in the past on numerous occasions, but that just adds to my character.
That's right. It builds your reputation as being a crank.
Well, but you know what? Changing the subject again briefly, I'm Pennsylvania German by origin. And one of the things that made us characters is that we like to joke around. And the nice thing about the Pennsylvania Germans is they don't mind laughing at themselves. Now, you may watch this transition and sit in total wonder, which brings us around to a barometer I almost bought. Right?
Right.
So let's show our listeners the barometer. I don't want hold the story off for a minute or two. Let's show our listeners the barometers. Let's start with this one. Barb Jersey, my gal. Well, that's really great.
Is it flashing for you?
Yes.
Okay. Something weird's happening.
All right. Well, that's better. My friend Barb Jersey, who runs Wonder Woman Estates, got a sale up in Burnt Lake, Michigan, which is now, you don't like to say in the middle of nowhere because that just gets people upset. But let's just say it was in a remote part of Michigan. Okay.
Right.
So she found this barometer in there made by Heath and Company in New Elm, London. It says Azimuth barometer on there, and it's in working order apparently. It is a wall mount barometer and it has a wonderful brass case. Let's have a side view of this. Okay. So Barb sends me an email and says, "Hey, what do you think it's worth?" Well, at first I thought, well, it's got to be 100 to a couple $100, but actually I researched it and I went on WorthPoint and I found a bunch of them and I found some. There they are, right?
Yep.
And I was astonished that the prices were not high, right? Let's take a look at now. Now you have to be careful. One was in a tin case. The one on the left top, I think, was in a tin case, but it sold for what?
187.
Yeah. All right. But then the next one sold for
75.
75, right? And then the one on the right sold for
55.
55, and the one at the bottom sold for
$13.
Well, maybe that one wasn't working. But I figured, okay, a good price is probably between 65 and 85 bucks. I don't know what caused the other one to run. Maybe there were two people that, were competing for it or whatever. But then Barb said, well, wait a minute, Harry. This barometer comes with a story, all right? So and the story is on a typed sheet of paper on the back of the barometer, all right? Now, you can't read that, and I can't either at this point, but we can blow it up a little bit. Oh, there it is. Okay. This barometer was removed from the yacht Naiad, once owned by Lord and Lady Simcoe of England, who was the Governor General of Canada, and hence the area known as Simcoe in Ontario. The yacht was built in 1897 of white oak on iron frame, and due to the great friendship of the Simcoes with Queen Victoria of England, a special dispensation was given by the Queen for the Simcoes to build a small replica of the Royal Yacht Victoria and Albert. The yacht was then built and was driven by a small triple expansion steam engine and a small Yarrow water tube boiler. The fittings and furnishings were luxurious with polished. Wait a minute. I have to be able to follow this here. Mahogany, and operated in the Muskog Lakes. The yacht was eventually sold to Mr. D.C. Peck, an American capitalist who maintained it in its original condition. And when this gentleman had to sell all his Canadian holdings and country home in approximately 1952, the yacht was bought by the Ontario Northland Railroad, where it was stripped, the steam plant removed, the diesel placed in. The yacht was converted to a passenger cruise boat and transported by road to the Mangi or whatever lakes north of and North Bay, and still operates in that area. The only part of the original ship remaining is the hull and the ornamental carving thereon. The present director of the company, Mr. R.C. McLeod, being a personal friend of mine, gave me the barometer as a souvenir, and I gave it to George Weaver, Brutus, Michigan, USA, and signed George E. Weaver, and then Douglas R. Weaver, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, right?
Yep.
So the question is, how much value does this story add to the barometer? Okay, so let's say base price 75 bucks.
Okay.
So she's running an estate sale in a remote part of Michigan, so try to go high retail is an issue. And we didn't take the highest one, we didn't take the lowest one either. So Barbara asked my opinion. She said, well, how high is the story? What's the story worth? And I said, well, if I were you, I think it's worth double the price of the piece, and I would put 150 bucks on it. So Barbara said, well, she'd think about it, which was okay with me. And finally, I call Barbara up and I say, all right, Barb, what price did you decide to put on it? She said, I'm going to put 150 on it. Now, this was a 2-day sale, and for the first day, everything is full price, and then at the beginning of the second day, it's at 35%, and then halfway through, it's just 50% off, okay? So
Yeah.
now, meanwhile, it's going over and Harry said, I want this, you know, it's like, hear it calling to me. Oh, like an Indian love call or something. And you know what? I'm a cheap buyer. Now, normally that can work for me, but can work against me. So I figured, okay, Barbara's going to put this out at 150. If it doesn't sell, I can get it for 75, maybe even a little less if it's at the very end of the sale. Better than no money to Barbara all the time. Or I can, you know, get it the second day for $100 instead of 150, since 35 is about a third off. So my first assumption was that Barb would not discount it the first day. Well, I call up at the end of the first day and say, hey, Barb, what happened to the barometer? Barb said, I sold it for 125. I said, what? Well, she said, you know, I was in the middle of nowhere and this guy offers me 125, which is not 150 admittedly, but awful close. And she said, it's better. Some money's better than no money. And I can't find fault with Barb for that. So she said, I sold it. I said, oh, damn, Barb, you know, I was hoping to buy it for $100 for you. But you know, but here's the thing is, if somebody can get more money than I'm willing to pay, I'm happy for them. So I said to Barb, well, I'm happy for you. It's there. And yet, I like things with stories. And this, I already had planned where to hang this at the condo in Florida and all the rest of this type of stuff. I thought the story was Jim Dandy and so forth. Right?
Yeah.
But that's
it's an interesting story, and anybody who comes by, you can tell it.
But that's right. But we've already established the story doubled the price of the piece, right?
Yes.
And we also have established that I'm a cheap buyer and I didn't buy it, right?
Right.
But yet it was a neat thing. It was so neat that I should have. There was this. Well, after I heard this, I was so mad at myself. I should have just said to Barbara, pay you 150. Okay? But now, as Paul Harvey used to say, for the rest of the story.
Okay.
Well, I was so excited about this that I talked about it on my radio show on Sunday. Last Sunday. And I go off, and I read the back, you know, the back of it and told essentially the same story I told now. And the radio show ends, and half an hour later, I get an email from a listener in Ontario, Canada. And he said, Harry, you got a problem. I said, what's the problem? He said, you don't have a problem. Fortunately, he said, you never questioned whether the story in the back of the barometer was right. I said, what? Now, you know, when we hear stories in the antiques and collectibles trade, we are geared to want to believe them. Really.
Yes.
And I, who am a resident skeptic, suckered into this story big time. Right?
Okay, so what was not true about it?
Well, that's a good question, because the answer is most of it.
Okay.
What happened was that Governor Simcoe in Canada died in 1780.
1780.
Which made it hard for him to get permission from Queen Victoria to build a yacht in 1897.
That would be a trick.
That would be tricky, right? So you could, well, it was a Simcoe heir or something like that, you know, because once you believe, you keep making up ways for it to happen, right? I mean, it's just a given in this business. And so I said, well, it must have been a Simcoe. He says, I don't think so, the guy from Canada says. I said, well, it just doesn't make sense. So, of course, Harry, who did not research this story, decides to try to do a research on the yacht Naiad, N-A-I-A-D. And it wasn't built by the Simcoes. It was built by William Sanford, S-A-N-F-O-R-D, a Canadian entrepreneur and businessman and industrialist, one of the wealthiest men in Canada at the time, not in 1897, but in 1890 by the Paulson Iron Company. All right, so And so the whole thing and the information about it is partially right, but also partially wrong. Although it was used on Muskogee Lakes, where this guy Sanford had a private home and was used to take his guests and so forth out around the lake and whatever. And then he died, and the wife used it for 40 years, okay? Now, meanwhile, you got to worry about why would Queen Elizabeth give this guy, right?
Yeah.
The right to reproduce the drawings for a royal yacht that was never built. Well, you do a little digging, and here's the story. It turns out that Mr. Simcoe and his wife, Louise, were having dinner with, Simcoe and his wife were having dinner with Queen Victoria and her entourage and her daughter, Princess Louise. And Princess Louise began choking on a chicken bone. And Mr. Sanford's wife, who was a nurse, I don't think they had the Heimlich maneuver then, got the chicken bone out and saved the daughter's life. Now, this is not recorded anywhere except in the legends of the lake up there. But the story is that then the Queen, in grateful gratitude, gave him the plans for the royal yacht because she was so grateful, knowing he was a boating enthusiast. And he was head of the local yacht club and all this other stuff, too. Well, the rest of the stuff goes on. The dates are wrong. The people are not quite right. The information is a series of falsehoods and half-truths, all right?
Yeah.
And finally, it gets down. Well, if all the information on the back isn't right, anything else, what's the next logical conclusion? That maybe this thing was never on the boat to begin with. Right?
Right. So have you dated the barometer itself? Is it the right?
No, the date's absolutely right. And the barometer. Okay. The question is the story. Because right now you have this typed document signed by this guy, which isn't right. Now, if I was doing an appraisal of an insurance claim, I often get called up by insurance companies to look at a claim where someone's filed for a loss of antiques and collectibles. Okay.
Yeah. I always think of your famous Moosehead story.
Yes, the infamous Moosehead story. We won't go into that one again tonight. But the point I want to make is that theoretically, all I need to do is find one thing wrong with an appraisal to get the whole appraisal discarded. It's called impugning the document. Okay.
Yes.
And usually, no appraiser is perfect, and I raise my hand and say I'm not perfect either when I do appraisals. And so, if I go through and I find one or two things that I question that are not off significantly, but are off, say, 30, 40%, I say to the insurance company, well, you could probably impugn the appraisal based on this, but I said the rest of it's totally accurate. And I said, I will not put my name on this by saying that this guy is dishonest. He may not have done his research in those two pieces. On the other hand, what had happened? Well, we could tell this appraisal story. A friend of mine with an insurance company in Chester County had a client that had a theft of antiques and collectibles, and he filed a claim, and the guy went to the house, but the guy was smart enough to take pictures of the remaining antiques in the guy's house. And he paid off the claim because he couldn't prove otherwise. And a couple years later, the guy had another theft, and some of the stuff that my friend had photographed from the insurance firm disappeared. Well, it turned out that the Philadelphia Mafia had taken over an insurance company and had a guy, insurance underwriter, and started filing policies with different companies, and then having their own appraisers. They'd have one guy get stuff sold, and another guy would appraise it, then he'd get stuff sold, and the first guy would appraise it. It went back and forth until they got greedy, right? and did this whole thing. Well, so this guy files a claim for this stuff, and lo and behold, doesn't my friend say, but this time I have photographs of the stuff before it was stolen. Now, not provided by the client, but provided by him. And one was a cigar store Indian that he wanted 20 or 30,000 for, and it was a brand new one. You know, there was no way you could take one look at the picture and here all these. It turned out they were all inflated. Well, they eventually called in the state police, and they broke they got the insurance guy that was under pressure from the mob to rat out the mob. All right. Now we'll come around to the rest of the story for this one. Are you ready for this one?
Okay.
The guy that got caught, and which I had to testify against, was the main arsonist for the Philadelphia mob. My wife lived in fear for about 3 years for fear of retaliation. But isn't that the type of character story that makes a person a character?
It is.
Yes. Well, back to the barometer here. So
okay.
Now I'm feeling really good that I didn't buy this stupid barometer, because first of all, if I wanted one, I could probably find one for $75 to $100 without a story. But I didn't. But if the first story had been right, I'd been a thoroughly happy camper. But then if it had the second story, I would have felt like an ass. I mean, jerk. But
yes. Well, and would you have purchased it before the radio show?
No.
Or after?
Well, I would have. I might have. I'd have taken it back. No, no, you can't do that. But no. I'm angry. I'm angry because you've been in my appraisal course, and the first appraisal rule is right: assume everything is guilty until proven innocent.
Right.
But you know, I wanted to believe that story so darn bad, seriously, that it never occurred to me to check it out. And I think that's typical. That's why a lot of dealers get away with crap. They make up stories about things, and people sucker into it. I mean, it was a big issue years ago, but it's still a big issue now. It's probably not as big issue as it was once before, but man, stories associated with things and where they came from and all the rest of that stuff. I have to confess that I really am mad. And trust me, I will buy things with stories, but in the future, they better check out or the heck with them. Seriously.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, enough of this. Next week, we have some fun things to talk about, but we would like to know what you would like to talk about, because this thing ran longer, and I've got some things I need to do tonight before I go over the first day of issue in Detroit tomorrow morning. But we would like to hear from you about what do you have you'd like us to talk about. The answer is send us an email to community@worthpoint.com. If it's about an object, make sure you describe it, send us photographs and everything else. If it's just a topic, tell us what topic you want us to cover. And by the way, we do have a letter in the mailbag from one of our contributors. Sorry to keep you up here so late. One of our contributors, and we will get to that first thing next time. Okay. The other thing is that I did get an email in this week that I do want to address on this chat. And that is that somebody said there's an object on WorthPoint that isn't what it's supposed to be. Doesn't WorthPoint vet the objects it gets from eBay? And the answer is no. On the other hand, unlike eBay, where you can complain and they will likely not do anything about it, I told the person to send evidence that this is not what it's supposed to be to WorthPoint, and they'll take it offline. You will, and you do.
Yes, we will.
Because I've had some experience with that. Now, but I told him, I said, you just can't say it's not that. You have to provide evidence. You have to provide evidence why it's not that. Because I looked at the object, and had I not known that it was questionable, I might have assumed that the listing was right. But again, here's that assumption that everything is right. Look. Caveat emptor, let the buyer beware. The burden is on the buyer to know what they're buying, not on the seller to know what they're selling. So, check it out. Make sure you know what you're doing. Well, that's a good way to end, actually, because I'm going to check out now and go to bed.
Yeah, you've been traveling. You can probably
And
use
you've been sleeping through the show here, so that's all right.
it. Not. I've
Quite.
had my eyes open.
Yes, you have, sir. And your mouth too, but we won't go there.
Right. All right, Harry. Well, next week, where will you be next week? You're going to be home, right?
We'll be here, and we will do it on a Wednesday next week. So I thank all of those who persist and watch for us and catch us on the reruns and so forth. So thank you very much.
Okay, Harry. Well, then until next week, we'll say goodnight.
Good night, sir.
Good night, Harry.